Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank all of you for coming to our first ever capstone presentations for our IT professional concentration. The 7 young men we have here have really worked hard all year. They've learned a ton in a lot of varying and very interesting areas that I'm excited for you all to find out more about what the projects they worked on. And their hard work. So we're very excited to get into the presentations. One note I would just like to add for the beginning, as we have on the screen there, if you could just leave your camera and microphone off at the start until the end of each presentation. If you have questions and you'd like to put them in the chat, you can do that, and we'll enable the ability to have your camera and microphone on when it's time to do so at the end of each of the presentations. Okay. So without further ado, we'd like to get started with our first presentation, which is Nolan Haynes, who did his presentation on, his project is on a network capacity assessment that he did for the Glazer Center. So Nolan, you're the first up.
All right, here we go. Can you all hear me? Any sort of, all right, good. All right, so hopefully I can get my presentation up here and not Mr. Sabatino's. That'd be nice. Let's see. Yeah. Share. There we go. All right. So slide 1, I'll just, go through all the stuff here. So my project was coverage amplification in our Glazer Center, which is our cafeteria, if you don't know. So I just want to give a little bit of context before I kind of get through with the rest of this. So before I made any changes, we had 2 wireless access points on either side at the main entrance of the Glazer Center. And this is fine. It worked for a while, but the 2 points kind of failed to cover a lot of ground, especially in the back half of the center. And I think myself and a lot of other students noted that during busy periods like 3rd, 4th, and 5th, which are lunch periods, the speed and quality of the network would drop a lot. So you'd sometimes get no Wi-Fi at all. You'd get bad Wi-Fi, you'd disconnect. It wasn't great. So, I mean, this was very consistent over my 4 years. It was a consistent issue. So I decided to do something about it for my project. All right, so this is a heat map previous to any work I did. And the first thing I did was collect data. So let me take a breath here, sorry. I recorded data from each day of the week of 11/13/23 up until 12 p.m. So this picture you're seeing right here is peak hours of our cafeteria during that week. And this was taken, I think, on a Friday. So the busiest day I could have gotten. And you can see I outlined it in red. That's the Glazer Center itself. And you've got access point 1 circled in pink and access point 2 circled in blue. So just to give you an idea of where things are before I kind of give you a little bit of data here. So on average over our week, on access point 1, only roughly 70% of students were able to connect to it during these hours, which is not that great. And this pretty similar thing for AP2, it was 65%. We had an average of 82 failed connections per day before 12 p.m. on AP1 and an average of 75 failed connections before 12 p.m. on AP2. So although this all worked and, it worked fine, I wanted to do something about it. And as you can see on the actual map here, that back half of the Glazer Center is left pretty uncovered with a lot of room to be desired as far as coverage went. So after recording and analyzing my data, I decided that I needed to do something about the coverage. So simply put, I got an access point. I configured its settings for our network. I found a port for it downstairs on our wall, plugged it in. I didn't collect any data, but I supervised the access point, making sure that everything worked and, everything was running smoothly. So as far as that went, everything was good. You can see on the left here, that little white thing, that's what our access points look like. You can find those in pretty much any given room or classroom around LaSalle, hallways as well. They're very unassuming. We kind of like to hide them on our ceilings, which are also white, big surprise. And you can see on the right, just a little view of inside Meraki, our management application for our network, showing the port that the AP was connected to at the time. So after installing the AP, I didn't really know where to go. I figured I kind of had everything done, but I noticed that the vast majority of people, like 99% of people, didn't realize that the Wi-Fi had even really changed or improved in any way. And at that point, I wanted to make sure that my kind of changes were noted by people. So I decided instead of going and telling people or just kind of, putting out a flyer like, congratulate me, whatever, I decided to disconnect the access point and then make a poll to see if people noticed. So this is my little survey here with some less than professional word choice, but it's fine. So I created a form that could be accessed via scanning the QR code. I put up flyers with QR codes so people could scan them in, make it easier to access. And I conducted this experiment during March Madness week, which is, I'm sure you probably can guess, really, really peak hours for these access points in the cafeteria. People like to hang out there. So I've got on the left, on the top, just responses from people with 75% of people saying that they noticed there was a drastic difference in Wi-Fi coverage and quality during said week. And you can see on the bottom here a very much less important graph asking me to, asking everyone to follow me on Instagram. And nobody really cared about that. They all wanted me to unblock March Madness on our Wi-Fi, that's fair enough. So just to reflect, I learned a lot of valuable things from all of this. I got a lot of hands-on experience with tech, networking technology, and topology, along with analysis. I learned how to show that my changes have made a difference, even if it took brute force to get other people to realize this. I learned that people don't want to follow me on Instagram. They just want to watch basketball. As far as lessons go, I learned that IT is often a thankless job. People don't notice when things are going smoothly or as expected because that's the standard. But when things change or get shaky, that's when people start to turn their heads, and that's just how it is. But I'm happy I learned this now so that I can expect it going forward. I'll just wrap this up with my improvement, an easy way to view this. So the form map is on the left right here. I already showed this. This is the aftermath on the right. You can see the two previous access points are still there, going strong. And then at the back there's my third access point circled in white. I also marked the doors, just little squares, which are also really sloppily drawn to kind of show people, or at least show you, that not a lot of people sit there. So it's not necessarily the fact that that access point isn't getting coverage in that area. It's just that not anybody really connects from there because there's no real seating or tables over there. So that's really all I've got for you guys. I just wanted to conclude this with what I still have to do, where this could go, and that's really it. So I think for now, I want to do a little bit more testing. Everything is really set for use, and I don't have to change anything directly as of now. But one or two things can really happen here. I can finalize this, and I can find a semi-permanent location for our access point to be like physically mounted onto a wall. Or I can run tests with an additional access point to see if it's worth the trouble of installing, configuring, and whatnot. But for now, it's looking like the formal. Thanks for your attention, everyone. I believe we're either moving on to the next presentation or I can take questions now.
Great. Thank you, Nolan. A question we have there from Brother Tony was, did you do a heat map after the install, which you showed at the end?
I did, yes.
Great. Were there any other questions anyone had?
I'll take that as a no. All right.
Great job, Nolan. Thank you for that.
Thank you. That's all. See everyone.
Great. Thank you, Nolan. All right. Next up, we will have Michael Donahue, who is one of two data projects that we had. Michael will present on some of his data demographics and additions he made for our admissions office. So, Michael.
All right. Hi, everyone. As I load this up, I'm Michael Donahue, current LaSalle senior and lab manager. My project was all about gathering and formulating data from the admissions department. So when I initially was thinking of what to do with my project, I went to Mr. Sowers with the idea of working with data analytics, who connected me to Mr. McCabe, who kind of provided me with a set of data that included students, grade schools, entrance scores, and their current cumulative GPA, with the student and schools being confidential. So for my project, I wanted to put a few goals forward to kind of formulate where I would go from the start. So the first was to kind of give an admissions benchmark for specific schools. So this would allow the admissions department to see this school has maybe this average, and this student with this GPA is either above or below that benchmark within the context of that school, and not just the entirety of LaSalle. Next is to kind of assist prospective students with seeing where they land within the LaSalle community. So seeing maybe, oh, I'm on the higher end, so maybe I can look to get a good position within the admissions pool. And finally, familiarizing myself with working with data. Because before this, working with data was something I kind of wanted to do, but never really was able to do something to this extent. So now I'm going to go to my results. So when I go to my Power BI dashboard, which is the main program I worked with, this is what you would see. And I'm going to break down each component one by one. So the first is a bar chart that has every school represented at LaSalle, so every middle school, each with its own entrance score average. Schools with lower numbers of students are represented with a darker orange, and schools with more students are going to be a bright yellow. So you can just see at a glance which schools have more extraneous data. Next with it is the average of the top 10 schools, bottom 10 schools, and middle 10 schools. This is kind of just to show important context to the specific situation of each school, I guess, just so that you can see where each school kind of lands within the top and bottom 10. But at the same time, I also made sure that the number of students was visible. So you could see, for example, for the top 10 schools, school 154 only had one student with a 99 average. So another student coming from that school might not meet that 99 average because that's pretty high. So our admissions department wouldn't say, oh, and below 99, that's not good enough. So yeah, you have that context with the number of that. Next is two bar graphs. On the left is the amount of students with GPAs ranging from sub 2 to above 4. And on the right is the amount of students in entrance score ranges from, I think, about 25 to 99. And you'll better see that in the next slide. On the right there, I have kind of a better representation of those ranges that I had in the last slide. And on the left is students plotted by average GPA over their entrance score, kind of just show a trend. This isn't exactly surprising information, seeing that as your entrance score gets higher, your GPA is probably higher because those higher achieving students are going to do well at LaSalle. But the predictive ranges can be pretty nice for students and parents to see that success, especially from an admissions perspective. Seeing that success is nice for, I know parents want to see that. And that's pretty much it for my data. So what I learned from all of that is that data is a very iterative process. I mean, I didn't just do all of that in one sitting. I had to go back with the admissions department, see what they wanted, see what I needed to present to them. I needed to work with others. I actually worked with a few teachers at LaSalle to get myself familiar with the programs I was using, but also present the data well. That kind of goes hand in hand with the next process, communication with others. I couldn't just do this project by myself. I couldn't just see the data and say, oh, I think I know what they want. Because if I just did my way and not their way, then we wouldn't have had anything productive done. And finally, making sure data is useful. If I'm not making useful data out of this, there's really no point in me doing that. So I would need to show off all of the different components of the data that they gave me. Do that. So that's pretty much my project. I guess, does anyone have any questions about it before we move on? Let me open the chat. I wasn't really looking at it during my presentation.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Michael, can you hear me on the audio?
Yes, I can.
This is Mr. Zwicker. Just a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Good presentation. How big was your data set historically?
So I had two sets of data actually, one with just schools and entrance scores, and one with students' entrance scores and GPA ranges. The ones with just schools and entrance scores was about 1,500 students, so about 1,500 points of data. And the other set with just student entrance score and GPA was about 250 students.
Gotcha. How far back did you go time-wise?
So the first one was all 4 years, so every single student at LaSalle, and actually I think it might have been a fifth year. So the past 5 years of students, and the second one was just student GPA and entrance score was just the graduating class of 2024.
Cool. Did you do all the
Yeah.
graphing in Excel, or did you use like a BI engine after you brought the data in?
Yeah, I used Microsoft Power BI for all of that, and then for some of the calculation stuff, I used Excel.
Excellent. Good deal. How would AI have helped you? Have you thought about that in terms of like taking this to the next step?
I guess for more of like the predictive stuff, seeing I guess like your GPA range and stuff, because I mean, I was trying to steer clear of all that stuff because I know it's kind of borderline uh not ethical, but I think AI could have definitely helped out with graphing and representing too the data, just to say making sure that everything is really readable. So.
Yeah, good. And then last question, you had a hypothesis or a use case that you were kind of using the data to vet out. Were there other like trends or conclusions that the data showed you after you went through the process?
I think mostly that if I go back to the previous slide, no matter what the entrance score was, there is a high rate of success at LaSalle. As you can see, like some of those lower average entrance scores, there were students achieving very high GPAs. So if anything, either that means LaSalle is very good or entrance scores and everything. Yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway from the data.
Good deal.
All right, thanks for your questions. Anyone else?
Hey, Mr. Sabatino, if there's time either now or at the end, I was blocked out. I couldn't ask Nolan any questions.
Sure, if you'd like to, and Nolan's still ready to take a question if you'd like to.
Hey, Nolan, Mr. Zwicker, I was just curious, what tool did you use for the site survey? You're on mute. It's weird. You look like you're off mute, but I can't hear you.
He's working on it. His headphones are messing him up.
Ah, okay. Mr. Sabatino, I know you're pressed for time too. If you want to move on, we can come back to Nolan.
Yeah, we'll come back to Nolan at the end. Let's move on
good.
to our our third presentation. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. Next, we have Ian Goldalion, who actually it was interesting. Is Ian's area of study and his project weren't necessarily aligned, which I thought was interesting, but there was a lot of the potential for some overlap there. So Ian's project was creating a chatbot for LaSalle's website. So without further ado, Ian, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ian Goldalion, and just like Mike, I'm also a member of the lab management program here at LaSalle. And my project was the implementation of a chatbot feature for our website. So just quick brief. So some people don't know the official definition of a chatbot. So a chatbot is an extension on any online platform that mimics human responses to a user's questions or statements. It provides 24/7 support 365 days a year to anyone who has an internet connection and who is on a device. So chatbots can work in two different ways. There's declarative chatbots and there's predictive chatbots. The one that I ended up building for this project was a declarative one. It responded using it had pre-written responses. And then the predictive chatbots use AI, NLU, which is natural language understanding, or NLP, natural language processing. and that responds to questions. So the predictive is what ChatGPT uses, for example. So the project, so my goal was to, I wanted the chatbot to respond with answers to commonly asked questions that are for information that is both on our website and both not on our website. The intended audience of this chatbot is students of LaSalle, their parents, and future prospective parents and their sons. I worked with Mr. McCartney, who oversees our website. So I work with him a lot along this project. So the project goals, I have three main goals for this project. One was to help people navigate LaSalle's website and then help them find the answer to their question to find certain information. Another one was to reduce the number of phone calls received when no one, and also when no one can answer the phone. As a lab manager, I was down there in the lab sometimes. I would notice how we'd have parents calling about stuff that is not related to the IT department in any possible way, but we just have to get that call and we would answer them. So that's what led me to this project. And lastly, I wanted to achieve a strong understanding of how a chatbot actually works and how it can impact a business and organization and how it can also impact its other people. Here's a rough timeline for my project. So on September 12th, I approached Mr. McCartney about this idea for the chatbot, and a few days later on the 14th, he came back to me and said it was approved, and I began work on the project. So in that time process, I began to formulate a list of departments that I could work with and some that I would not. And I sent out an email explaining what my project was, if we could meet, if you guys could respond to some questions. I ended up meeting with a few departments in person because they had there was some uncertainties and they wanted to ask me some questions, additional questions. Another key date was November 23rd to the 13th of February. This was this really solid chunk of time I had when I was working on the project, meeting with departments and just getting work done on the chatbot. And December 1st of 2023 was the first successful edition of the chatbot layout. It was the athletic department, courtesy of Mr. Zanio. He got back to me really quickly, which was very nice. And it was very straightforward with him. And on March 18th, the final edition of the chatbot was made and testing began on that day. So resources required for this project. So BotPress was the website that I used to help formulate this chatbot. Final Site, which is what our website is made on. I used my laptop for testing. Mr. McCartney's laptop was also used. And lastly, just simply meeting with departments and just getting their commonly asked questions. So here on the screen right now is just a picture of what it would look like on our website. Obviously, it's not going to say chat test, but this is what we have. Only Mr. McCartney and I have access to this page. It's not open to the public yet, but if you can see it, just briefly, just so you can hit the blue box for chat now, and that'll launch a new window, and then you can ask your questions there. Above that, it mentions what departments are in here. So mission, ministry, college counseling, athletic, music department. There are a few others that we did not mention in that, but I believe there's a total of 7 to 8 departments that are in this. So right now I'm going to play you a quick demonstration of how it works. So first you launch that link, and this is the brand new window, and you just type any word you want. So hello works just fine, and then it'll process that, and then it will respond. The pre-written response will be hello, my name is Joe the Explorer, which is our mascot. And then it's a series of drop-down boxes. You navigate to the department that you want to go to, and then it's a bunch of the most commonly asked questions. So then you can choose any one of them, and then it will then pull the information that I have it to respond with. And then it'll ask you if it help if to answer your question or not. Say yes, it just says thank you so much. Like I'm great, I'm happy to help you. And then if you have another question, you can just simply just type I have another question, and then it will start the whole process over again. And then you can do the same thing, but you can obviously select a different department. One nice thing is that your responses do not go away. So if you forget the answer to your question, you can simply just launch the chatbot again. It can be you can close out the window, doesn't matter, and your response will still be on your screen, which is very nice. In the event your question is not answered, you simply just hit no, and then it will respond with a link to our ticket page. You'll launch that, and you can submit a request, your email, subject, and your problem that you have, and someone will get back to you as quick as possible. So budget cost for this, this did not cost anything. This did not require any purchases, licenses, or additional infrastructure. So this was entirely free, which is very, very nice. Scalability. So obviously I'm a senior and I'll not be here next year. So BotPress allows the owner to invite people to edit and use this project that I've created. So Mr. Sabatino, Mr. McCartney, anyone else that needs access to this project, they will have the freedom to add new information as time progresses, update things, take things down. They will, and I will also have the ability to do this as well. Another thing that I want to do in the foreseeable future, which I did not get to due to time constraints, is adding links to take users directly to the desired information. I want to see how the current layout goes, and if there's too many complaints and people still can't find their information, then we will implement this into the chatbot. And then lastly, the impact that I wanted this to have. So it aims to benefit LaSalle's growing IT department in the lab manager program, obviously attract more students into, I guess, the IT profession, and simply demonstrate the capabilities of evolving technology in our world and how it impacts consumers. And thank you very much. That's all I have for you. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Ian. I think one thing I would start with, just because I thought this was interesting, and not just your project, but a few of the guys' projects, the people aspect of IT, I think, is one that was pretty strong there, right? I mean, Ian, I think like you said, you had to spend a lot of time talking to a number of people in order to make your project what you wanted it to be. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so it was very challenging, say the least. I think I sent a total of 3 different emails. I have Mr. McCartney, Mr. Sabatino tagged in those emails, but still people did not really respond. And it took me multiple months. And it honestly took a lot of work and a lot of effort to get all my information and to get these, to make these connections. But in the end, it was worth it, very much so.
Ian, did you have time to explore kind of like the new AI versions, like with large language models and some of the generative AI capabilities kind of starting to be infused into some of the chatbots? If you had time to look into that, how would that change your kind of next iteration or next version of this?
It would definitely open up the possibility of more questions being added to this chatbot, because, as I said, I only asked for like the most commonly asked ones, and for stuff that people have the most trouble finding. So in the future, if I have that open language model, it could open the door to a bunch of more questions that could be answered, and not just these, and they could help a lot more people in a wider audience.
Yeah, because that's the issue with the chatbot. Your first version is really cool, but obviously you were limited to the questions that you could get feedback on, right? And kind of having that almost drop down. So it's not really conversational, and it's not necessarily learning from more data that you're feeding into it to be able to have better responses, quicker responses, point people to the answers that they're looking for more quickly. But it's a great first start. It's a great first start.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We had another question there.
Yeah, Nate. Yeah, so Nate asked, do you plan on adjusting some of the chatbot responses to make it feel more natural? This is just the first version, so definitely there will be updates in the future. So for now, I mean, there will be Joe the Explorer, but that will most likely be changed.
Yeah, and I think there was another question too.
In the chat?
I'm sorry, I had my hand raised, but Chuck asked the same question. Great job, everyone. I love the line that IT is a thankless job. Do not go into IT for the glory.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ian, thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts here. Next up, we have Andrew Rocco, who tackled asset management and what we're currently doing at LaSalle and what we can do to improve our asset management at LaSalle. So without further ado, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. As Mr. Sabatino just mentioned, my name is Andrew Rocco. I'm currently the president of the Lab Manager program here at LaSalle, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my asset management overhaul project. So, asset management overview. So the first thing is, what is asset management in information technology? Asset management refers to keeping an active inventory of devices within an organization. This is vital for the IT environment or IT environments of all sizes due to the vast benefits that come with an accurate and updated inventory of devices. With an updated asset list, organizations are able to make more informed decisions when it comes to purchasing or repairing equipment. Organizations will also be able to identify devices out of warranty and potential risks from users through the tracking of the device. And asset management also encourages accountability and transparency in the workplace, as administration can identify users whose devices are consistently at risk and encourage better browsing practices. So what is my project? My project seems kind of simple on the surface. It's to asset tag every device on our campus. This is in order to provide up-to-date information on any device at any time. This project has proved challenging for two primary reasons: in physical tagging and back-end management. As many of you know, LaSalle has a large campus with many different buildings, so having to locate these devices in these different locations has been a challenge. Furthermore, inputting the device details and scanning the barcode on each tag prior to tagging a device has proved challenging, as the team has first needed to gather information on the device, then create the device inside of Asset Tiger and scan the barcode before actually tagging the device. So there's many moving parts. However, the project's end results will be worth far more than the time spent starting it up. So what are the goals for asset management at LaSalle? Primary goal is to save money. By having an updated inventory, our program will be able to save money on future purchases by not overspending on unneeded devices, and everyone likes money, so that's a big plus. Continued use was also a huge goal in this project, as we intend to use this software for the foreseeable future. The turnover of lab managers every 4 years made finding software with a simple backend management interface for a quick learning experience extremely important. Scalability is also crucial in a school that sees turnovers of students and teachers. Being able to quickly identify inventory and allocate devices and resources for projects, as well as students and staff, again, plays into saving budget, but it also plays into improving the educational setting at LaSalle, as we will be able to be more confident in lending out loaners, monitors, and keyboards, which also plays into the increased turnover rate of devices loaned out. So our asset management software, we implemented Asset Tiger initially to help solve many of our issues with loaners, as too many students were requesting loaners, and we began to lose track of the condition and location of these devices throughout the school. With Asset Tiger's reserve and checkout feature, we are able to put a name to a loan device with the ability to actively track it. This feature has proved its worth tenfold, as lab managers can now log into the Asset Tiger portal and very easily identify how many devices are currently loaned out and those that have not been returned in a significant period of time. We also implemented this feature onto many of the Apple TVs throughout campus, which has helped us reveal the location of many missing TVs and remotes, including an Apple TV that was suspiciously renamed to Living Room and strangely located in Ambler. Another huge benefit to working with Asset Tiger is the ability to purchase additional tags in different quantities and sizes, which plays into the previously mentioned scalability capabilities when it comes to asset management. And so here is just the dashboard on Asset Tiger. As you can see, the dashboard's design is very simple yet informative. Towards the bottom of the screen, you can see the reserve and checkout feature I just mentioned, and the calendar is also extremely useful for viewing upcoming events for specific devices. For example, the warranty I was mentioning, the calendar is very helpful for instances like that. And this is the asset list of Asset Tiger. Again, very easy to comprehend. Everything is right in front of you for you to see, and it's very, very, very useful for the continued use I was talking about, as new lab managers will be able to quickly pick this up with the description and the status. So that'll be very helpful for new lab managers. And finally, skills I learned from the project. First and foremost is project management. From the planning to the execution stages of the process. I learned trial and error and consistency are crucial for projects of larger scale such as this. I've also learned that team coordination skills from the completion of this project. I first introduced this idea of asset tagging the entire campus in a LaSalle lab managers meeting around half a year ago, and it's been awesome to have groups of guys come up to me asking if they can help. This skill also plays into catering to the skills of the team, as some members of the group were more eager to run around and tag everything, while others preferred to stay back and help me with the back end upkeep. The final skill that played a key factor in this project was problem solving and critical thinking at every step along the way. This skill was employed from figuring out where devices were to how we were going to organize them in the Asset Tiger. And in closing, I want to thank you all for your time and encourage anyone with questions to reach out.
Great job, Andrew. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Andrew, Mr. Zwicker, good presentation. Curious, you said a couple times about really the model of tagging everything, all physical assets. Were you asked, or did you think about doing any kind of cost justification behind that? I mean, the price of the tags are pretty cheap, but to do it at that scale, if you were trying to sell me and I'm the CFO of LaSalle, how would you cost justify that?
Yeah, obviously. So one of the issues we ran into was we were lending out, for example, I'll just use monitors. We were lending out way more monitors, and for some reason we would not be getting them back. And the price of an asset tag is just a fraction of what losing those monitors would cost. And plus, if we asset tag everything in our back inventory now, it'll make it like in the future lending out these devices, we can be more confident in lending out these devices because we'll know we'll be able to get them back and we'll know where they're at. So the price of the asset tag is really cheap in comparison to what we'll be able to do with the devices.
Did you do any kind of swag on what the cost to explore that model would be?
I don't think we went into the numbers. Mr. Sabatino and I have been purchasing the asset tags in like small increments, but I'm sure there's a running total somewhere.
Yeah, great, good deal. And did you guys, sounds like you did you look into active tagging to do like location tracking? Do you see like a business case for that?
Yeah. So for example, I made like a joke about it earlier about like the one Apple TV being named like living room.
Example,
But
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure almost all the Asset Tiger tags just come with tracking initially. And if they don't, we prioritize using the tracking ones on the devices we know that are going to be leaving our site and leaving the lab. So
yeah, I think Chuck, to your point, I think there are certain things where even the visibility piece of it. So an example I would say would be laptop chargers, right? And so they're the kind of thing that walk pretty easily, but having an asset tag on it, right? When someone leaves that somewhere, you find it somewhere. That was a key thing for us. They're not exorbitantly expensive, but when you're buying them at $45 a pop or something like that, the slapping a $2 asset tag on it to maybe be able to recover some of those instead of you're also then looking at for us an asset tiger to say like, oh, this is the third time we've lent a teacher a certain teacher a cord, etc. Right? So there is that part too.
Yeah, very cool. Andrew, I'd encourage you just as a next step to start to look into location tracking. It's kind of the next gen or the next iteration after you get past the asset management and the asset tracking piece of it. You can get a little bit creepy, but you can also start to look at that, especially in like a school setting where you may have tags that guests who come into the school need to wear or that are issued to them that allows you to track real time where they are. So if you need to make sure that somebody's not in the part of the school where they shouldn't be based on what they're doing, you have the ability to do that. That kind of then starts to tie into your network and security and so forth. But it's a fascinating kind of next bridge for you if you're looking to take those skills to the next step.
That's interesting. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Next up, we have Jared Wirtz, who also did a data project. He'll be showing us some data visualization that he did for our admissions office. So next up, we have Jared.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jared Wirtz, and for my Capstone project, I made a bus route map and a student demographics visualization. So. The bus routes project was made for the transportation page to replace a previously outdated map. The previous map was also lacking in the ability to be updated. For my project, I tackled these two problems by using Leaflet, a mapping API that produced the visuals, and I made a server with Express.js and Multer to listen for any updates from the admin page. The student population visualization was made for the purpose of being used for admissions to be able to identify where students are placed. Similarly, I use the same APIs for my bus routes to create the server and the map and for the student population visualization. And here's a quick demo of the bus routes. So when you click on the marker, it provides 4 major properties: the name of the stop, the region of the stop, the pickup, and the drop-off times. These are for prospective parents and people who are interested in using LaSalle bus routes, LaSalle's private bus routes along the way. Then I added a feature to show the use of the buttons. So the buttons are for the routes, to make the routes appear and disappear. That's currently on the LaSalle transportation page if anybody would like to access that. This is my student population demo. So I used the zip codes that for the data that I was given as number of students, and then I counted each zip code and turned it into the count as and used it as the equivalent of a student. And then when you click on the zip code, it provides zip code and the number student. And then I added a search bar to make it easier to find the zip code, since there's 150-ish or so. I also added a heat map, which we'll see shortly, to see the visualization of the concentration of the students. Lastly, I wanted to look at the future of both projects. For the bus routes, I thought it would be useful to have it update the routes based off the traffic patterns. I thought that was a good idea because roads could be closed and there could be an increase in the amount of traffic on the normal route to help gauge the new arrival time. With that in mind, I would also add an estimate arrival to the map as a new property for the markers. For the student population visualization, Admissions could add academic data to the map. Then admissions could identify and see that students in zip code X are better at math than students in zip code Y, but students in zip code Y are better at English than students in zip code X. Furthermore, it would help admissions place freshmen in their proper academic degree. The last improvement that can be done is mixing the bus routes and student population data and seeing, for example, that students in area X are doing well academically, but LaSalle doesn't receive many of those students because of the lack of transportation. So then LaSalle can add either a new stop or a route to help encourage students to attend LaSalle. Thank you for listening to my presentation on my bus routes map and student population visualization. Are there any questions?
Hey, Jared, pretty cool. What was the mapping software that you used?
Leaflet.
So does that just handle Excel data coming in, and then you can kind of then once you load the data in, then you can start to visualize it on the map?
Yes.
So where did you get the bus routes from?
So the bus routes was provided by LaSalle. They already had like a pre-made route by the Mets busing company.
Got it. Okay. And then the student population, are they just, was that the entire student population, or was it just the student population that you verified uses the busing?
So that was the student population of the whole student body in the last like 5 years.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you
Yeah,
try, I'm sorry, Mike.
Oh, go ahead.
Did you try and correlate the student population to who's actually riding those buses?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, we when Jared and I talked about that potentially being one of the uses for his project, right? So same with Michael's data as well, that there's a lot of overlap on how these things could work together, which I think is one of the cool things about these projects.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You were thinking, Jared, about like academics and, tying that to access to bus routes and so forth. I was thinking more just even like if you could correlate who's using those bus routes to the student population you have, like just thinking about like, hey, freshmen, if they're all riding on the same bus, do you at least make them aware of each other as they're trying to get to know one another, coming into LaSalle for the first time? So like, how could you use it to improve the student experience with the people who are using those buses, and that might make them more amenable to wanting to take the bus because they're getting on with people that they're starting to establish friendships with. Just like that's where my head went with this. But you could have a field day with the data as you start to kind of draw corollaries with it. The other thing would be cool too, and maybe I'm getting a little Star Wars here, but if you had real-time tracking on the buses, you could see what buses were running late and what students were impacted. Generally, you couldn't exactly know that the student was on that bus, but at least you'd know that, hey, these students might be coming late because the bus is running late because you got real-time tracking. So like, I would encourage you to think about like next level, what could you do with like real-time analytics tied into the data that you're starting to put together here on the map.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice job with it.
Great. Thank you, Jared. All right, next up we have Gavin Hoover, who did a project that did some work with some coding to write a program that enables especially certain teachers to be able to find students based off of their schedule. So without further ado, we have Gavin Hoover. Gavin.
Hi. Here, let me get my my thing shared. Share. Can you guys see that okay?
You're good.
Hi. Hi, I'm Gavin Hoover. For my IT Capstone project, I made an app called What's Your Free? In short, the purpose of this is to find LaSalle free periods, student availability on a mass schedule or a mass scale. So, program purpose is it organizes data in a way that PowerSchool can't. PowerSchool is the program that our school uses for availability, grades, and anything student schedule related. In short, what you do is you enter the period in the class, and it will find all students who have a free period during that time. This has a lot of use cases in yearbook, photography club, student affairs. Yearbook every year, yearbook has to pull all the juniors in LaSalle down to a room during their free periods in order to get their senior gown photos. And this will simplify the process for doing that. Photography, people taking photos of the school can see where the most amount of students are free so they can get the best photos. And if they want more freshmen or more sophomores, they can do that with this app. And student affairs. Every year, the group advisors have to meet with all students in a certain grade, and being able to organize the data where you present all students in a free period will help them see visually who has free during the most amount of periods so that they can schedule meetings. The current way of sorting through schedules is incredibly inconvenient and consuming. You have to, the best way to do it would be to print out all the schedules and highlight free periods. And I'll go over that in a sec. So the program origins, it originates in Yearbook. And how I got really into student schedules is for Yearbook, as I was discussing earlier, we had to get every single junior down for their senior gown and cap photos. And so Brother Francis, the person who runs Yearbook, printed out every single senior schedule. And as you saw, those schedules on the last slide, they're big and they're very confusing. And everybody in Yearbook sat there and we highlighted free periods for the entire Yearbook session. We had to organize the schedules of the highlighted periods into who was free. It was incredibly confusing. And I thought to myself, I know how to code. I'm sure I can do this better. And so I started solving the problem. And this is it kind of opened up to me the influence of being able to manipulate information and in a simple way so that Brother Francis, the person who runs Yearbook, can use this to simplify our lives. So this is a single day. I just want to go over this real quick so that you understand. Over here on the top circle, you can see on the left, it's a little cutout, but it would say HR on the top row. That's homeroom. And then you have 1_1, 1_2, 2_1, and so on and so forth. Those are first period, second period, all the way to sixth period. And each is split up into a half period. So the first half would be 6-1, and you'll see in the program later. Then to the side, we have the day. We have letters A through H day, and we just cycle through those. And then you have the semester on the side. So my first conceptualization when I first thought of this is, oh, I could just input the information into the program and it'll build a schedule to get all the kids down in a certain period. There was no preloaded information. It was all console based. The user would enter it. As you can probably already tell, that didn't last for long because it's just not practical to ask somebody to input out all that information. The second iteration was still console based, but I added CSV files with the help of my AP computer science teacher, Mr. Patel. Got those from Mr. Sungrady in the IT department and embedded them in the program, so you no longer had to enter the information. But this version was way too confusing. I added a bunch of useless features and got off track of what the program's main purpose was. I got into this printing schedules and doing stuff PowerSchool already did. And faculty had trouble navigating the UI. So I went up to one of my teachers and I said, like, look at what I made. And they responded to, what am I even looking at? And that opened up to me that I needed to build a GUI, something more usable. So third conceptualization, and with the help of another teacher, Mr. Fox, is building a GUI using Java Swing. So you can see here the layout of what I built. Anyone can use this program. It's incredibly simple. You just use the slider values to adjust the period and adjust the day. You click either at the bottom here, senior, freshman to senior, or all students, whether you want the first semester or not, and then you go. It removed all the useless features that I had gotten off track with and really brought the project back to what it was originally supposed to do, and was to find free periods. One thing I did keep with this is you can adjust the class. So there's a little thing here with the options of all the classes. I also, with this iteration, I moved the data from CSV files on the actual app, and I moved it to a GitHub repo off the app so that when you change the CSV files and update, you don't have to re-download a new app. So scalability, the person that takes this over after me will be able to just upload the CSV files at the GitHub repo each semester, and then all the apps will just pull from that. So nobody has to, you can download the app and forget about it. So this is a video run of how the app would work. You're going to see me plug in a class and then go through the classes, see that there's a free option in the slider, or you could just click free on the side for usability. And then you can adjust this, I'll adjust the slides, the students, and then whether it's first or second semester. So as you can see, I both put in a class that students didn't have during a certain time, and the program brought up no students. I put in a free period, and it showed all the students that had that free period during that time. And then I brought up a class that I was in, and it showed all students that were in that period. So this is my pre-calc class right here, and just showed my pre-calc class. So at the end of the day, what I learned, three main things were how to implement CSV files into a program. So how to preload the data into an app, how to make a GUI, and how to get my app to talk to an outside source. Are there any questions or comments?
Hey, Gavin, pretty cool use case here. Just curious, do you see a benefit to making this into a mobile app?
No, I don't, because most of the use cases would not be like on the road or doing something quickly. It would be sitting down and trying to schedule things out. So I would think that most users would have a desktop when they're trying to do this.
That's great. Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.
All right, we have our last presentation. So for our last presentation, we have Nick Wilson. Nick's presentation was outside of LaSalle, which I really liked, and I think speaks a lot to what we talk about, the personal aspect of IT, and how getting things done in IT, a lot of times it's going to take a lot of involvement of a lot of people, and Nick can definitely speak to that from his experience. So without further ado, here is Nick.
All right, thanks, Mr. Sabatino, and thanks everyone for sticking around. Well, not sixth period cloud fundamentals class. It looks like they all left. But I'm Nick Wilson. My project involved mobile device deployment with Pennsylvania State Senate. Really catchy name, I know. And it was a really involved process. I worked with the Pennsylvania State Senate over the summer. So getting into it was really ambitious, I would say. When you're going to look at the human aspect of IT, working with the public sector as opposed to the private sector, regular corporations, is really an undertaking. The type of data which they're working with and the responsibilities which they like to uphold is a lot higher. It's a lot higher standard. And it's just a very different environment in terms of what's permissible and what is not. So with this, the concept of working with the Senate, of working with a human-related AI project, not AI, my bad, of human-related IT project really came before the idea itself. So a big component of my project was just arriving at the idea. And with this, I worked with a lot of different people. I worked with people who work within the districts, and I also worked with the Senate Computer Services Department. And we developed a number of pitches. Among them included cybersecurity and network infrastructure. Though ultimately, through analyzing what the users needed, what the Senate employees needed, and things such as that, we arrived at the project itself, which was mobile device deployment. So coming up with this project, coming up with what I ultimately developed was very long. It was a very long and arduous process. As I mentioned, I worked with computer services to come up with the project. So we asked them what their issues were. They had a bunch of these mobile devices, which they had to roll out to district offices, but they had no procedures for doing it, or very little procedures for doing it. And what they did have was very inefficient. So to come up with the final product, I met with technicians in the field. We deployed the devices. We took a hands-on approach to this issue. And we ultimately decided on what would be best. And with them, considering the constituents and whatnot, we developed the project. Now, as I mentioned at first, working with the Senate is a very difficult thing because, as you may imagine, there's a lot of central oversight and regulatory issues which you have to tackle, which might otherwise not be present in the public sector. So this was a major component of my project and one of the biggest hiccups we had along the way. So ultimately, we arrived at the final product, which is this. It's a simple procedure guide for how to deploy mobile devices. Essentially, everything involved in it, the phones we use, the management software for them was developed with this product. We use Verizon to get the eSIMs and activate them. We use Intune for management. Now, here at LaSalle, we use a software called Jamf because there are some compatibility issues using Intune and iOS. However, the Senate, as I was mentioning with the regulatory things, prefers to use all Microsoft products. So this is an example of that in play. Additionally, I tried to make the project involve as few dependencies as possible. Because when you're working like an organization like this, you want to keep the number of potential areas of fault very limited. You want to minimize your attack area, your surface area, and you want to keep it as simple as possible. Additionally, this procedure guide involved the introduction of passwordless login. Here at LaSalle and across multiple other organizations, passwordless login has been started to roll out. And with the Senate, I decided to introduce this as well. Passwordless login really diminishes the possibility of brute force or any other password-based attacks, and definitely allows for a higher degree of security when it comes to user authentication. And lastly, as I was kind of getting at as well, the process, I tried to make it all as efficiently as possible. We tried to simplify every component of it. And if you look at the guide itself, you can see it's a very self-explanatory thing. There's nothing super complex about it, but that was one of the key things, because in the Senate and in the public sector especially, you don't really have many disruptors. You don't have many people who are trying to work outside of what they're given. So when you're developing these things, when you're developing these procedures, protocols, you want to make it as simple, as easy, and as intuitive as possible, such that they're not doing things which are incredibly long and arduous, as they were doing in my case, and such that they're doing it as efficiently as possible. So once I introduced the paper to Senate Computer Services, they accepted it, and it went out very well. They're rolling it out to district offices as we speak. We have, I think, something in the range of 5,000 brand new iPhones, which are being rolled out to district employees and whatnot. And considering the project altogether, it definitely taught me one thing, which is that from a business perspective, we tend to think of things from either a top-down or bottom-up perspective. But in this case, it was best to think of it from a mixed approach. So considering it from the bottom down would have issues with security and with policy, whereas considering it from the top up only would have issues on the user side. I know within Senate offices, restrictions are very, very intense on what they have access to. You can't access websites which are outside of a block list, a whitelist. You can't download any software whatsoever. Things such as this, it makes it very difficult for Senate employees to do their jobs to the best of their ability. So in my case, we tried to approach it from this mixed point of view. We didn't look entirely top down, nor did we look entirely bottom up. We considered what was important from the top down, but we also considered what was important for the Senate employees. When doing this, it took a while. And as this image here illustrates, we went with 47 emails between me and Senate Computer Services on developing it. We also had several meetings and meetings with constituents, with employees and technicians. So all in all, I would say it was a very good learning experience, understanding what organizations need and the importance of compliance and policies in the IT sector. I remember when we did our visit to the data center, which was, when we did our visit to the data center, one of the first things they said to us was how important compliance is. And I definitely took that to heart when I was developing this project. I wanted to look at the compliance-based and especially, as Mr. Sabatino was saying, the human-based components of IT. And I think working with such a big organization, with an organization which has so much restrictions, such as the Senate, was a very great learning opportunity. And I'm all in all really appreciative of the process. So thank you. I'm the last speaker. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
Great job, Nick. Thank you for, you did a great job with your project and your presentation. And like I said, the human aspect of it, I think, is such a missed part sometimes for people in IT. Do we have any questions for Nick or for Nolan at this point, because he's still available if we had a question for him? I do want to be mindful of people's time as we're about at the end of our time here.
Mike, if you have time, Mr. Sabatino, if you have time, my question to Nolan was just, was there anything that Meraki inherently in the console was able to tell you as you went through your site survey when we're looking at kind of optimizing the placement? You're still having problems with your audio.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea.
There you go. You got it.
Now you can hear me?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Can you hear me, Mr. Zwicker?
I can.
All right. Now I can't hear anyone else, but that's fine. I did my survey through Microsoft Forms, so not through Meraki. Either way, Meraki didn't explicitly tell me any of that. That was stuff I had to survey on my own time. So the heat maps that I provided are not necessarily heat maps exactly of coverage, but they're heat maps of connections from students. So although it doesn't explicitly say, hey, we can't connect to students back here, it very strongly inclines to the fact that students were not able to connect to our access points from those areas. And I found the actual data I found as far as people not being able to connect or people being disconnected, that was explicitly said. That was stuff I could collect day to day through the access points through Meraki.
Good deal. Yeah, I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to look at that a little bit more deeply. There's a lot of capabilities in that. Thanks. Nice job.
Yeah, thank you. I want to really, say thank you to everyone who joined. I know the guys that were in class had to jump off when they were done their class, but I really appreciate you taking the time to hear from these guys. I want to congratulate these guys on an amazing job that they did on these projects. So thank you all very much. And we have an in-person night tomorrow night for anyone, and we will. Some of these guys will be doing open house as well. Or if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out. We can get you in touch with any of the young men that did their presentations today. Thanks, everyone.